Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to address something that too many of us have been conditioned to do, being nice to men at our own expense. We have been raised to believe that being accommodating, gentle, and endlessly patient is a virtue. But at what cost? How often have we silenced ourselves to avoid conflict? How many times have we put a man's comfort above our own well-being? It's time to stop. Being nice doesn't mean being kind. Kindness is intentional and based on mutual respect. Being nice often means suppressing your boundaries, diminishing your worth, and accepting less than you deserve. It's time to break this pattern. From an early age, many of us are taught that being nice is the key to being liked, accepted, and valued, especially by men. We're encouraged to smile even when we don't feel like it, to soften our words so we don't come across as too much, and to put others' comfort above our own. But here's the hard truth. Being nice does not guarantee respect. In fact, in many cases, it does the opposite. When you prioritize being nice over asserting yourself, you send a message, intentionally or not, that your needs, opinions, and boundaries are secondary. You might think that by being agreeable and accommodating, you're fostering positive relationships, but often what actually happens is that people take you for granted. Your kindness becomes an expectation rather than something that is valued. Think about the times you've gone out of your way to be nice to a man, even when he didn't deserve it. Maybe you laughed at an unfunny or offensive joke to avoid making things awkward. Perhaps you agreed to a favor that inconvenienced you just to avoid seeming rude. Maybe you stayed silent when a man interrupted you in a conversation, not wanting to come across as aggressive. In these moments, you weren't gaining respect, you were losing it. Respect comes from standing firm in who you are, not from pleasing others. It comes from having the confidence to speak up, say no, and refuse to tolerate behavior that disrespects you. When a man truly respects you, it's not because you were overly nice to him, it's because you held your ground, set boundaries, and showed that you value yourself. Men respect women who respect themselves. The women who demand fair treatment, who don't accept excuses for bad behavior, and who make it clear that their kindness is not an invitation for disrespect, are the ones who are valued and taken seriously. Meanwhile, the women who constantly put their own needs aside in order to be nice often find themselves being ignored, mistreated, or overlooked. The reality is, nice is often mistaken for weak. It's seen as an opportunity to push limits, take advantage, and test boundaries. When a man realizes that you'll always be agreeable, he may start expecting you to tolerate things you shouldn't echo, whether it's dismissiveness, inconsiderate behavior, or outright disrespect. And once that pattern starts, it's hard to break. That's why it's crucial to redefine what it means to be respected. Being a good person, being kind, and treating others well is important, but it should never come at the cost of your self-worth. You can be kind while still being assertive. You can be compassionate without being a pushover. You can be strong without ever having to be nice in a way that diminishes your own value. Respect isn't given to those who are merely agreeable. It's given to those who demand it. From childhood, women are socialized to be pleasant, agreeable, and accommodating, while men are encouraged to be assertive, dominant, and self-serving. This conditioning creates an imbalance where women feel a deep-seated obligation to be nice, even in situations where it's undeserved or harmful to them. Meanwhile, most men do not feel the same pressure. They do not worry about whether their words might come across as too harsh, whether their boundaries will make them seem unlikable, or whether refusing to do a favor will make someone upset. They are raised with the confidence to put themselves first, something many women struggle with. Think about the last time you bent over backward to be nice to a man. Maybe it was a coworker who spoke over you in a meeting. But instead of calling him out, you smiled and let it slide. Maybe it was a man you were dating who failed to communicate properly, but instead of demanding better, you made excuses for him and gave him more chances. Maybe it was a stranger who made an inappropriate comment, but instead of shutting him down, you nervously laughed because you didn't want to seem difficult. Now flip the scenario. Often do you see men doing the same for women? How often do men censor their words to avoid coming across as too blunt? How often do they put a woman's comfort before their own in the same way women are expected to? The truth is they don't, because they don't feel obligated to. Men have been conditioned to prioritize themselves without guilt. They ask for raises without worrying about seeming greedy. They reject dates without over-explaining to avoid hurting feelings. They interrupt conversations without a second thought. They say no without apologizing for it. They assert their needs without feeling guilty for doing so. Meanwhile, women are constantly battling the fear of being labeled as mean, cold, or too much if they simply express themselves in the same way men do. We soften our emails with exclamation points and overly polite language to avoid sounding demanding. We over-apologize even when something isn't our fault. We hesitate to take up space or voice our opinions too strongly. But here's the harsh reality. Men don't grant women extra respect for being nice. In fact, many exploit this expectation. They rely on the fact that women will be too polite to call them out, too forgiving to hold them accountable, and too accommodating to say no. The reason men don't feel obligated to be nice in the same way women do is because they don't face the same social repercussions. A woman who isn't nice is often labeled as difficult or rude, while a man with the same behavior is seen as confident and assertive. This double standard forces women into a cycle of over-accommodation, where we are expected to prove our worth through how much we give, tolerate, and endure. It's time to recognize this imbalance for what it is, a tool used to keep women in a submissive, people-pleasing role. Men rarely feel obligated to prioritize our feelings over their own. So why should we feel compelled to prioritize theirs? Why should we hold ourselves to a standard that they don't even attempt to meet? Women must unlearn the idea that being nice is our duty, especially when it's not reciprocated. It's not our job to make men comfortable at the expense of our own needs. It's not our responsibility to be endlessly accommodating while they move through life with no such burden. Instead of striving to be nice, we should strive to be respected, valued, and heard just as freely as men do. We're taught that being nice is the key to forming connections, getting ahead, and being well-liked. But in reality, being excessively nice, especially as a woman, often leads to being overlooked, underestimated, and even dismissed. The more agreeable, accommodating, and self-sacrificing you are, the more invisible you become. Society has conditioned women to believe that being pleasant and non-confrontational is the best way to be accepted. We're told that if we're patient, understanding, and easygoing, people will appreciate us. But what actually happens? Nice women often find themselves being passed over for promotions at work, ignored in social settings, and taken for granted in relationships. While we sit quietly, waiting to be noticed and appreciated, others, especially men, are making themselves seen and heard without hesitation. Think about how this plays out in the workplace. A woman who is overly nice, who never challenges authority, and who constantly goes out of her way to accommodate others is rarely the one who gets promoted. Why? Because she is seen as reliable but not leader material. Meanwhile, the men who speak up, push back, and assert their ideas without worrying about being liked are the ones who get ahead. A woman who is always agreeable is often seen as a team player, but a woman who confidently advocates for herself is seen as a force to be reckoned with. The same pattern applies to relationships. How many times have you heard a woman say, "I did everything for him, and he still treated me like I didn't matter"? This is the danger of being too nice. When you give too much, expect too little, and constantly put someone else's needs above your own, you train them to see you as an afterthought. People value what they have to earn. If you are endlessly patient and forgiving, if you never demand respect or reciprocity, many men will take you for granted, because they assume you will always be there, no matter how little they give in return. Nice women often end up in one of two positions: being the emotional caretaker for everyone else while receiving little in return, or being completely ignored. In friendships, they are the ones who listen to everyone's problems, but never have their own emotional needs prioritized. In relationships, they are the ones who give and give until they have nothing left, while the men they support feel no urgency to reciprocate. Even in social settings, being too nice can make you fade into the background. People are drawn to confidence, self-assurance, and those who assert themselves unapologetically. A woman who is always accommodating and hesitant to take up space is often overlooked, while the one who speaks with authority and knows her worth commands attention. The harsh truth is that people respect those who set boundaries, assert themselves, and demand recognition, not those who passively wait for it. Being overly nice makes you easy to ignore because it signals that you don't value yourself enough to expect more. This is not to say that you'd be cruel or indifferent, but rather that you should prioritize being seen, heard, and respected over simply being liked. If being nice means blending into the background while others take the spotlight, it's time to reconsider how much value being nice really holds. Women are often expected to be nurturers, caretakers, and emotional supporters, even when it's exhausting, inconvenient, or undeserved. From an early age, we are conditioned to believe that offering our time, patience, and energy to men is just part of our role in life. We listen to their problems, validate their emotions, support their ambitions, and comfort them when they struggle. Meanwhile, our own emotional needs are often ignored, dismissed, or seen as less important. This expectation of emotional labor is one of the most draining and unfair burdens placed on women. It shows up in friendships, relationships, and even the workplace. Think about how many times you've had to console a man when he was upset, even if he never did the same for you. How often have you been expected to be the one who fixes things? Whether it's a struggling relationship, a man's self-esteem, or his personal issues. And how many times have you been left feeling depleted afterward? The reality is that many men rely on women to be their emotional safety net without giving that same level of care in return. Women are expected to provide endless support and patience, while men are often not raised with the same expectation of emotional responsibility. They are allowed to be selfish with their time, to set boundaries without guilt, and to prioritize their own needs without worrying about how it affects others. This imbalance is especially clear in romantic relationships. Women are frequently placed in the role of therapist, expected to absorb their partner's stress, fears, and insecurities while downplaying their own struggles. When a man is distant, we are told to be understanding. When he fails to communicate, we are expected to be patient and wait for him to figure it out. When he mistreats us, we are encouraged to look for the underlying reason instead of simply walking away. But who is telling men to do the same emotional work for us? Even outside of relationships, women are expected to perform emotional labor everywhere. In the workplace, we are expected to be the ones who smooth over conflicts, offer emotional support to coworkers, and maintain a positive atmosphere even at our own expense. In friendships, we are often the ones who check in, offer advice, and provide emotional reassurance, sometimes to people who never do the same for us. But here's the truth: you owe no one your time, energy, or emotional labor unless you choose to give it. You are not responsible for managing a man's emotions, healing his wounds, or helping him grow if he is unwilling to do the work himself. You do not have to stay in conversations that drain you, tolerate behavior that exhausts you, or be available whenever someone else needs you while neglecting your own well-being. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it's necessary. Just as men feel no guilt about prioritizing their time, you have every right to protect your energy. You do not exist to be someone's emotional crutch, therapist, or problem solver. You are allowed to walk away from situations that do not serve you. You are allowed to say no without explaining yourself. You are allowed to demand reciprocity instead of endlessly giving without receiving. When you stop feeling obligated to pour your energy into men who don't deserve it, you reclaim your power. You shift from being someone who is constantly drained to someone who is valued and respected. And most importantly, you begin to prioritize yourself the way men have been taught to do all along. From the time we are little girls, we are taught that being nice is a virtue, that politeness will earn us love, And that being agreeable will open doors for us. We grow up believing that if we are kind, accommodating, and easygoing, people, especially men, will appreciate us, respect us, and treat us well in return. But the real world doesn't work that way. The reality is that women who prioritize being nice often find themselves overlooked, undervalued, and mistreated, while assertive women, the ones who know what they want, demand it, and refuse to settle, are the ones who succeed. The workplace, relationships, and social dynamics all favor those who are bold, confident, and unwilling to shrink themselves for the comfort of others. Workplace dynamics, the nice girl trap in professional settings. Women who are too nice are often passed over for promotions, underestimated, and expected to take on the less desirable emotional labor. They are the ones who are asked to plan office events, smooth over conflicts, and take on extra responsibilities without extra pay. They are seen as dependable, but not as leaders. Why? Because leadership demands assertiveness, not excessive niceness. A woman who constantly puts others' needs before her own, avoids confrontation, and waits to be recognized instead of advocating for herself will always be at a disadvantage. Meanwhile, men and assertive women will push for raises, demand respect, and speak up without hesitation. The ones who negotiate, advocate for themselves, and set clear boundaries are the ones who get ahead, not the ones who hope that being nice will eventually be rewarded. Relationships, the cost of being too nice in relationships. Nice women often find themselves in a painful cycle of giving endlessly while receiving little in return. They make excuses for men who treat them poorly, tolerate neglect, and try to fix partners who don't deserve their effort. They lower their standards because they are afraid of being seen as demanding or high maintenance. They convince themselves that if they are just a little more patient, understanding, and giving, then one day the man they are with will change and appreciate them. But that rarely happens. Instead, men tend to respect and value the women who set high standards from the start. They pursue and commit to women who establish clear expectations and who are not afraid to walk away if those expectations are not met. Women who are too nice, who overextend themselves without requiring effort in return, often find themselves abandoned, used, or unappreciated. Men are wired to value what they have to work for. If you make things too easy, if you never challenge them, and if you never demand reciprocity, many men will take advantage of that dynamic. Meanwhile, assertive women, those who communicate their needs clearly, set firm boundaries, and refuse to be treated as an afterthought, command respect. Social perception. Confidence over niceness. People respect those who respect themselves. When you are too nice, when you constantly seek to please others, you risk being perceived as someone who can be manipulated, taken advantage of, or dismissed. I look at the women who are admired in society. They are not the ones who go out of their way to be nice to everyone at their own expense. They are the ones who walk into a room with confidence, take up space unapologetically, and command attention. They are the ones who say no without guilt, who prioritize their own needs, and who make it clear that they are not here to make everyone comfortable. When you stop prioritizing niceness and start prioritizing assertiveness, everything changes. You get the promotions you deserve. You attract partners who respect you. You gain the confidence to walk away from situations that do not serve you. You stop being overlooked and start being taken seriously. The world rewards those who demand what they want, not those who quietly wait for permission. One of the biggest lies women are told is that if they are nice enough, patient enough, and accommodating enough, they will be rewarded with love, commitment, and loyalty from men. We grow up believing that if we are sweet, nurturing, and understanding, men will appreciate us, fall in love with us, and treat us well in return. But time and time again, reality proves otherwise. Women who base their worth on being nice often find themselves heartbroken, confused, and asking, why wasn't I enough? The truth is, men do not fall in love with, respect, or stay loyal to women just because they are nice. If that were the case, the kindest, most self-sacrificing women would have the happiest relationships. And we all know that's not how it works. Nice doesn't create attraction. Being nice is not the reason a man chooses a woman. If niceness alone were enough, then every sweet, loving woman would have her dream relationship. But attraction, respect, and long-term commitment are built on much more than just kindness. Men are drawn to confidence, self-respect, and the ability to set boundaries. Think about it. Have you ever seen a woman who gave her all to a man, did everything for him, and treated him like a king, only for him to leave her for someone else? Or maybe you've experienced it yourself, being the good girl who did everything right, only to watch as the man you cared about pursued someone else who wasn't nearly as nice as you. That's because attraction is not based on how much you give, it's based on how much you value yourself. Men do not commit to women because they are endlessly patient, forgiving, or self-sacrificing. They commit to women who make them work for their attention, who challenge them, and who have a strong sense of self-worth. Nice women get taken for granted. When a woman is too nice, when she always says yes, never demands respect, and constantly puts a man's needs before her own, she becomes easy to overlook. Men often see these women as dependable, nurturing, and safe, but not necessarily as women they feel the need to chase, impress, or prioritize. A man may appreciate a nice woman, but appreciation is not the same as desire. It is not the same as respect. A woman who is always available, who never stands up for herself, and who constantly forgives bad behavior teaches a man that she will always be there regardless of how he treats her. And when something is guaranteed, it is often taken for granted. Men value what they have to earn. If they don't feel the need to put in effort, if they know you'll always be there, no matter what, they will not treat you as a priority. They will assume that no matter how they behave, you will stay, so they have no reason to step up. The women who command respect aren't always nice. Look at the women who are truly respected in their relationships. They are not necessarily the ones who are the nicest. They are the ones who demand respect. They are the ones who don't tolerate half-hearted effort. They are the ones who walk away when they aren't treated well. They are the ones who set standards and stick to them. These women are not mean, but they are not afraid to be firm. They are not cruel, but they will not tolerate disrespect. They do not bend over backward to please a man because they know that a man who truly values them will put in effort without needing to be begged or convinced. Meanwhile, the women who spend their lives trying to be nice to keep a man often find themselves disappointed. They assume that if they are endlessly forgiving, patient, and accommodating, the man will realize how wonderful they are and treat them better. But instead, they are often left wondering why their kindness wasn't enough. Nice won't keep a man loyal. Some women believe that if they are nice enough, a man will never cheat, lie, or leave. But loyalty does not come from niceness. It comes from mutual respect and effort. A man who is committed, who values his partner, and who truly respects her will remain loyal because he chooses to, not because she is excessively nice to him. On the other hand, a man who lacks integrity will cheat no matter how kind, loving, and devoted his partner is. Many women blame themselves when a man mistreats them. They think, maybe if I had been more patient, more understanding, or more forgiving, he wouldn't have left. But the reality is that no amount of niceness will make a man who does not respect you suddenly change. Stop thinking that niceness is the key to love. Women must stop believing that being nice is their greatest asset in relationships. Yes, kindness is important, but it must be balanced with self-respect, boundaries, and high standards. Being nice alone will not make a man value you, love you, or remain loyal. The women who are loved, respected, and cherished in relationships are not the ones who give endlessly without requiring anything in return. They are the ones who make it clear that they will not settle for less than they deserve. If you want to be valued in a relationship, stop leading with niceness. Lead with self-respect. Lead with confidence. Lead with the understanding that you are the prize, not just someone who is endlessly nice in the hopes that a man will finally see your worth. One of the biggest mistakes women make is prioritizing being nice over setting boundaries. We are raised to be accommodating, to put others' comfort before our own, and to avoid being seen as difficult. But in reality, being nice at the expense of your boundaries doesn't earn you respect. It only makes you easier to take advantage of. Men and people in general respect women who know their worth and who are not afraid to assert their needs. Yet many women hesitate to set boundaries because they fear being seen as mean, rude, or unlikable. They worry that saying no, speaking up, or demanding better will push people away. But the truth is, the only people who get upset about your boundaries are the ones who benefited from you not having any. Why women struggle to set boundaries from a young age. Girls are conditioned to be people pleasers. We are taught to be polite, to avoid confrontation, and to make others feel comfortable, even when it comes at our own expense. We are told that saying no is selfish, that standing up for ourselves is aggressive, and that setting standards is too much. As a result, many women feel guilty when they assert themselves. They say yes when they really want to say no. They tolerate disrespect because they don't want to make a scene. They stay in situations that drain them because they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But in doing so, they hurt themselves. Being too nice leads to being disrespected. When you don't set boundaries, you invite people to test your limits. If you allow someone to treat you poorly once, they will assume they can do it again. If you never say no, people will expect you to always say yes. If you never stand up for yourself, people will assume you don't mind being walked over. In relationships, failing to set boundaries leads to one-sided dynamics where the woman gives everything while the man does the bare minimum. She forgives too quickly, tolerates disrespect, and lowers her standards because she doesn't want to seem difficult. But the less she demands, the less she receives. In friendships, being too nice often leads to being the one who is always available, always giving and always listening, but rarely receiving the same effort in return. The friend who is too nice is the one people call when they need something, but not necessarily the one they prioritize when they don't. In the workplace, a lack of boundaries results in being overworked, underpaid, and unappreciated. The nice woman is the one who gets stuck with extra tasks, who is expected to always be agreeable, and who is passed over for promotions because she is seen as someone who will accept whatever she is given. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. Setting boundaries is not about being harsh or unkind. It's about valuing yourself enough to refuse to tolerate what doesn't serve you. A woman who has strong boundaries is a woman who knows her worth. She does not tolerate disrespect. She does not accept less than she deserves. And she does not allow people to drain her energy without reciprocity. Boundaries sound like I am not available for this conversation right now. I do not tolerate being spoken to that way. I need time for myself, and I am not responsible for fixing your problems. No, without explanation or apology. When you set boundaries, you teach people how to treat you. You show them that your time, energy, and presence are valuable. And the ones who truly respect and care for you will honor those boundaries because they understand that a woman with self-respect is not someone they can manipulate, use, or control. Boundaries will attract the right people. Some women fear that if they start setting boundaries, they will lose people. And they might, but the ones they lose are the ones who never respected them to begin with. The right men will respect a woman who has standards. The right friends will understand when you say no. The right workplace will recognize your value and treat you accordingly. The only people who will be upset when you start enforcing boundaries are the ones who are benefiting from you having none. And those are the people you should be distancing yourself from. When you stop prioritizing being nice and start prioritizing your boundaries, you will see a shift in how people treat you. You will command respect, attract healthier relationships, and feel more empowered in every area of your life. Because at the end of the day, being respected is far more important than being liked. One of the most damaging messages women receive is that prioritizing themselves is selfish. From an early age, we are taught that being a good woman means putting others first, whether it's our family, friends, partner, or even strangers. We are praised for being selfless, accommodating, and nurturing. We are expected to sacrifice our own needs for the comfort and well-being of others, often at the expense of our own happiness. But here's the truth. Prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It is the key to living a fulfilling, balanced, and empowered life. Women who constantly put others first often end up exhausted, unfulfilled, and resentful, while those who prioritize their own needs, goals, and well-being are the ones who thrive. The myth of the selfless woman society glorifies self-sacrificing women. The woman who gives endlessly to her partner, children, workplace, and friends is seen as admirable, while the woman who prioritizes herself is often judged as selfish, demanding, or even cold. But what happens to the selfless woman? She is the one who burns out because she is always giving and never receiving. She is the one who feels invisible because she is always meeting the needs of others while ignoring her own. She is the one who wakes up one day and realizes that she has spent her entire life taking care of everyone else while neglecting herself. This is not an act of kindness, it is an act of self-neglect. Women are not meant to live solely for the service of others. You are not obligated to sacrifice your happiness for the sake of being seen as a good woman. Men have no problem prioritizing themselves, why should you? Men do not hesitate to put themselves first. They pursue their goals without guilt. They set boundaries without apology. They walk away from situations that do not serve them without looking back. And they are rarely judged for it. A man who focuses on his career, passions, and self-growth is seen as ambitious. A man who refuses to tolerate mistreatment is seen as confident. A man who puts his own needs before a relationship is seen as independent. But when a woman does the same, she is often criticized. Women are conditioned to believe that their value comes from how much they do for others, while men are taught that their value comes from how much they achieve for themselves. This is why so many women feel guilty for prioritizing their own goals, needs, and happiness because society has convinced them that their purpose is to serve others first. But the moment you start prioritizing yourself the way men do, everything changes. You begin to operate from a place of self-respect rather than self-sacrifice. You stop tolerating situations that drain you. You start making decisions based on what is best for you rather than what pleases everyone else. If you don't prioritize yourself, no one else will. When you constantly put others first, people will gladly take what you offer without thinking twice. If you always make yourself available, people will expect it. If you never say no, people will assume you are okay with always saying yes. If you never make your needs a priority, people will treat them as unimportant. But when you start prioritizing yourself, you teach people how to treat you. You set the standard that your time, energy, and happiness matter just as much as anyone else's. You make it clear that you are not a resource to be drained, but a person with your own dreams, desires, and limits. The people who truly care about you will respect your decision to put yourself first. The ones who don't, they were only there for what you could give them. Choosing yourself will transform every area of your life. When you stop feeling guilty for prioritizing yourself, you will notice a shift in every area of your life. In relationships, you will no longer accept one-sided love, half-hearted effort, or partners who expect everything from you while giving nothing in return. You will demand reciprocity and respect. In friendships, you will surround yourself with people who pour into you as much as you pour into them. No more being the one who always gives while receiving nothing back. In your career, you will start setting boundaries at work, asking for what you deserve, and making decisions that align with your personal goals rather than what others expect of you. In your daily life, you will stop overcommitting, over-explaining, and overextending yourself just to make others comfortable. Instead, you will invest time in what truly fulfills you. The bottom line, your happiness matters. You do not exist to make everyone else happy while sacrificing your own joy. You do not have to justify putting yourself first. You do not have to feel guilty for choosing yourself. A fulfilled, empowered woman is not one who has given everything away in the name of the mice. She is one who understands that her happiness, peace, and well-being are just as important as anyone else's. And she refuses to apologize for prioritizing them. At the end of the day, being overly nice does not earn you love, respect, or loyalty. It only teaches people that they can take you for granted. The more you prioritize pleasing others over valuing yourself, the more you will find yourself feeling drained, unappreciated, and unfulfilled. But the moment you stop being excessively nice at your own expense, everything changes. You start setting boundaries without guilt. You start expecting effort instead of constantly giving without return. You stop settling for relationships, friendships, and situations that do not serve you. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is the most powerful act of self-love. When you prioritize your own happiness, you step into your full power. You attract the right people. You create a life that fulfills you. And most importantly, you send a message to the world that you are not here to be used, overlooked, or taken for granted. So stop being nice to men who don't deserve it. Stop seeking validation through self-sacrifice. Stop allowing kindness to become your weakness. Instead, be kind but be firm. Be loving but have boundaries. Be giving but know when to walk away. Because the most powerful woman is not the one who bends over backward. For everyone else, she is the one who stands tall, values herself, and refuses to accept anything less than she deserves.